And how much of an influence do you think the Portuguese forward will have on the game?
Oh, he's going to have a huge influence, isn't he?
How much of an impact and how significant is him not being in the side for a game like this as well going to be?
Well, firstly, as far as I'm aware, I'm going to repeat what Andrew's just said. I don't think we know for certain whether or not Wilson will miss this game.
Yeah. And so, Adam, coming to you on this, and obviously there's a lot of people who've taken the statement quite badly and had their own views on it. And so, what is your view on it?
Yeah, I think first of all, I mean, I wasn't surprised at all to read it off the back of another poor, disappointing transfer window.
Hello and welcome back to True Faith, the Writer's Block. It's episode 17 with myself, Daniel Wills, and tonight we've got two regular guests, returning guests in James Lynch and Adam Morrison, and we've got a very special guest in Andrew Musgrove of the Chronicle. How are we all doing tonight, lads?
Yeah, good.
Great, thanks.
Brilliant. Just a quick reminder, as I always do at this stage, that if you do want to get involved with True Faith, whether it's right for the website, right for the fanzine, or be involved in shows like this, head to @TF NUFC on Twitter. Drop us a line, get in touch, and we'll sort things out for you. Now, our first topic tonight concerns this weekend's fixture with Manchester United and the possible return of a certain Cristiano Ronaldo to Old Trafford. So I'll come to you first, Andrew, on this one. How do you see the game going first, and how much of an influence do you think the Portuguese forward will have on the game?
Oh, he's going to have a huge influence, isn't he? I mean, regardless of whether he starts or not, there's talk about him heading into the centre circle before kick-off. That's just going to get everyone up a height. And then even if he's on the bench, if it's level or they're not having the best of games coming now, and you see him warming up on the touchline and then coming to the touchline, the number goes up. The influence that's going to have on the game is going to be absolutely huge. And, whether he starts, whether he comes on later in the game, he's one of the best players in the world, even at 36. And yeah, you do fear what he as an individual can do for Manchester United against Newcastle, but also the influence he will have in terms of, like I said, getting the fans excited. And just, yeah, I think if you're a Newcastle United fan, you will be filled with worry. My one hope is that they will have a talk tomorrow. They've had a talk this week. They'll have a talk before the game on Saturday, that they're coming to Old Trafford, not just to be invites to or guests to this return of Ronaldo, but they're coming to gate crash this party and to upset the mood inside Old Trafford.
Yeah, and do you think that's a scenario like that, in the sense that obviously he's going to stir up the Man United fans, could in fact stir up the Newcastle players to try and, as you say, gate crash that party and create their own little moment of history by defeating Manchester United on his return?
I would hope so. I would hope it would put a bit of fire in the belly of these players. I mean, you should already be excited. You should already be wanting to go to Manchester United, to Old Trafford, thinking we can beat these guys, thinking that you want to beat Manchester United at Old Trafford, because, I've just been looking at the stats there. Man United have won 17 home games against Newcastle out of 18. So that's amazing, isn't it, when you think about that? Newcastle have won once away, 6 times at St James's Park. 31 games out of 52 Man United have won, if the Premier League's website is up to date and correct. So don't write in if I've got that wrong, but that's the stat there currently. It's an amazing stat, and you just, if you're Newcastle and you beat Manchester United at Old Trafford, you do go down the history book. It's something that's rarely been done, especially not in my lifetime, and it's something that is remembered, and it should get those players going. Ronaldo coming, it's just an added bonus, an added incentive to make sure you turn up and do more than just, exactly that, turn up.
Yeah, that's quite optimistic when you think about it like that, in a sense. So, James, do you share this optimism, or do you just think it's going to be a hammering?
No, I don't share that optimism in the slightest, if I'm honest. Look, you brought up some great stats there, Andrew. I mean, I'll give you another one. Interestingly, Ronaldo has only ever scored one hat-trick for Man U. And guess who that was against? Yeah. It was against us in 2008 when they beat us 6-0. To be honest with you, I can easily see that being the repeat scoreline again this Saturday. I mean, I had a look at the bookies odds today. I like a little flutter sometimes. We're 15-1 to win this game. 15-1. I mean, you rarely get those kind of odds in a Premier League match. And look, taking it back to will he, won't he start? I'm almost certain that he will. Home fixture for them. One of the easiest games he'll probably play this season. I mean, we've conceded 8 goals so far already this season. I think only Norwich and Arsenal have conceded more than us. So you'd have to bank on the fact he'd be well up for this. He'd want to play. I reckon he might even get 2, maybe even 3 against our defence the way we're playing at the minute. The interesting thing actually about Solskjaer's team selection is that it looks like Sancho won't play. I think he's picked up a bit of a knock on international duty and in training. Of course, we all know Rashford's still out. So you would think on that basis, Ronaldo would start as a number 9 with Greenwood perhaps dropping into that right wing slot. But look, they've got a lot of options. Cavani to come off the bench, Martial another option, Jesse Lingard's chomping at the bit to get in the team, and there's many ways that they could hurt us. And if we will come on to talk about injuries later, if it's led to believe that Wilson and possibly Fraser, even though we might not play, are injured, I just think it's going to be a total humiliation, and I'm dreading the worst, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you mentioned many of Manchester United's attacking threats there. So, Adam, how do we go about nullifying that and trying to stop their attack?
I think we've just got to go and try and play on the front foot and try and have a bit of sort of self-belief. And I think Bruce has a tendency to give the big teams a bit too much respect and sort of go in thinking, if we get away with a 2-0 defeat here, no one's really going to complain, rather than actually go and sort of and press hard and keep the ball and try and create chances. And I think it's just having that belief that we can go and cause an upset and not sit back, sit off them, give them 70% possession, give them 30 shots or whatever. I think it was the home game last season. I remember watching that. It was first game when I think it was an 8 o'clock kickoff on the Saturday night, and there was talk of that sort of pay-per-view thing for Sky and all that. I think it was round about then. And I remember watching it thinking, we just sort of stood off, and I think it was Juan Mata, who's 32 years old, I think, just picking the ball up at will in between the midfield, in between the defenders, having as many touches as he wanted. And we just sort of gave him far too much respect. And I think in the away game last season, it was more or less the same, although for about 20 minutes in the first half, we looked fairly decent. But then we just faded away. So it's just going and having a go, really, pressing them hard, not giving them time on the ball, not giving them too much respect. And, and we'll see what happens then if we do get beat 2-0. Fair enough, but just not going and just laying down and just relying on the goalkeeper to make 20 saves and getting out with a 2-0 defeat.
Yeah, I mean, could it be argued that obviously Leeds are a team who do play on the front foot and try to win possession and things like that? And of course, when they went to Old Trafford at the start of the season, they got absolutely hammered 5-1. So is there a case, I'll come to you for this, Andrew, is there a case for sitting back and trying to soak up some pressure against a team that has such attacking threat?
There is, to a certain extent, but I think the key is that can't be the game plan for the whole game. You need to show some attacking intent. You need to give something to these fans who've paid good money to get down to Old Trafford, who've booked hotels, who've paid for the buses and the trains. Because the one thing that will really anger fans and angers me as a Newcastle United fan is when, as Adam says there, the team sometimes does give too much respect to the better teams, to the bigger teams. This is the Premier League. Anyone can beat anyone if you're in the right mindset. But if you do sit back against these teams who've got so many options, like Manchester United have, I mean, if you take Ronaldo out of the equation, James kind of already mentioned that they've got so many options that most teams will fear. And if you show them too much respect, they're going to punish you. And what you need to do is you need to go in like Southampton did. You need to go in like Wolves did, and actually take the game to them and say, well, come on then. You're this big Manchester United team, got all these good players. But, we're not just here because we have to be. We're here because we've come and we're going to try and get 3 points. Whether that'll be the approach, who knows? I mean, you've got to have a strong defence to allow yourself to try and hit on the counter, haven't you? And so far, Newcastle have been missing that in the opening few games of the season.
Yeah, that's right. So before we move on from this topic, I may as well go around, considering how much we've done this topic now, and ask for some predictions. So I'll start with you, James. How do you see it going?
Well, fortunately, I'm going to have to say we're going to get beat 6-0.
Optimistic, absolutely full of it.
What can I say? Sorry, lads.
What about you?
I agree. I just think we're on for a real hammering, like a proper hammering, 4-5-0, and reminiscent of that. Was it January 2007? I think maybe James went to Old Trafford and we just got absolutely hammered 6-1 or something like that. I feel it's in the air, I'm afraid, this week.
Yeah, fair enough. And then Andrew, can you restore the hope a little bit, or are you gonna go with them too?
No, I think they're going to get beat. I just like to point out before when you said I was being optimistic. I don't believe I was being optimistic.
Perhaps not. I think I was just trying to
expect the bare minimum from these players, which is to actually
you're right.
Want to win. I can't see it happening though. I mean, the Ronaldo factor, the good quality players have got the fact that Newcastle might be without Callum Wilson, and we'll obviously find out in Steve Bruce's press conference whether that is the case. It's a win, isn't it? It's a nailed-on win. It's just a matter of how many Newcastle concede. Hopefully, it won't be too many, but you do fear 3-4 maybe. That's me being optimistic.
Yeah, fair enough. That brings us neatly on. Of course, you mentioned the potential injuries, I should say, to Callum Wilson there and Ryan Fraser, which brings us very neatly onto our second topic of the evening, which are, as you say, the potential injuries to Callum Wilson, our star striker, and Ryan Fraser, who hasn't had much of an impact this season so far, but whether he will remains to be seen. Now, James, I'm going to come to you on this because I know how much you love Callum Wilson and have said on previous episodes of this show just what you think of him. How much of an impact and how significant is him not being in the side for a game like this as well going to be?
Well, firstly, as far as I'm aware, I'm going to repeat what Andrew's just said. I don't think we know for certain whether or not Wilson will miss this game.
Yeah.
Some journalists,
rumors.
That's right. Some journalists are saying it's going to be a few weeks. He's going to be out. Other reports saying he's going to face a late fitness test. So right now it is up in the air. But as Andrew said, we will find out hopefully more in Bruce's press conference tomorrow. But it doesn't look good right now for him. And it's a massive shame really, as he's got bags of ability, bags of talent, as you rightly say. I'm a massive fan of his. But at 29 years old, he is injury prone. And you do worry a bit that he's never really going to fully recover from these muscle injuries that he keeps picking up. And I believe it was 3 hamstring injuries he suffered from last season. And there's conflicting reports saying it's possibly a thigh strain he's got at the moment. But look, we all know, without saying the obvious, he's our talisman. He's a massive, massive miss in any game, whether it would be Man United, whether it would be Norwich, whether it would be, a League Cup game against a League One side. He's so important to us, and you don't really see any other avenue of or outlet of goals right now for Newcastle. And look, Maximin can do a lot, as we know, and it seems to me the tactic right now is from the coaching staff, from Bruce, is just give the ball to Maximin and let him kind of run with it. But I can't see Maximin doing everything or being able to control that game on Saturday. It's just not going to be possible. So look, we all know how important Wilson is, and you take him out of the equation on Saturday, and there's absolutely zero chance. I still think if he plays, we would lose, but at least I think if he does play, we've got a chance of at least scoring. But it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you, and obviously Ryan Fraser as well. Obviously, we've seen pictures of him on Twitter. Leaving the Scotland camp on crutches, and so Ryan Fraser is an interesting one because, when he signed, there was quite a lot of excitement, of course, with his previous link up with Callum Wilson at Bournemouth. But he's never really hit the heights, and certainly didn't last season. And this season has yet to really break into the team as well. So Adam, obviously, him being out is a problem. But what do we do with Ryan Fraser, and how do we get the best out of him?
Yeah, it's a real shame. I think he's just never really sort of found his feet at Newcastle. It was last season. It was I remember the Burnley game at home when he had a good game, but after then it was around about October time. He had the injuries, and then the red card at Sheffield United, which watching it, on the night, you're thinking that it could have been avoided. It wasn't unlucky. It wasn't as if it was sort of 2 unlucky yellow cards. It was 2 bad tackles, and he got sent off, and then he got a ban. And he's just never quite found his feet. And reminds me a little bit of when we see him de Jong, when we signed him, and he's sort of quite a good reputation, but was just always injured, played a game, missed 5, played another game. And his brother Luke de Jong as well, turned up on it with quite a good reputation, but just never found his feet, never found the back of the net. We've got a bit of a habit of signing these players who just don't seem to, for whatever reason, find the straps and get a good run of form. I think he's a really good player, fantastic player, tricky winger. I watched him in the Euros albeit Scotland weren't in it for too long. But just because he's a Newcastle player, I wanted to see how he got on, and I do really like him as a player. There's talk that Bruce doesn't really know where to play him. Bruce doesn't really fancy him. If you look at his involvement in last season and this season, it is a funny one. But I'd love to see him, playing up front, maybe as a three, Wilson and Saint-Maximin as like a front three there. But no, I think it's just perhaps another one of those players who we're not quite gonna settle. And we're not gonna quite find a place for him.
Yeah, it is a real shame, isn't it, when you think about it? Of course, with all the promise that he signed with. Andrew, if these injuries persist with Ryan Fraser and we can't get the best out of him, do we get rid? Do you think that's an option come the summer if this season doesn't go well for him, or is that too soon?
I think everyone is expecting this season to be really key for him after the injuries he had last season. I just think he needs a run of games, and it just seems to be every time he goes away to our international duty, he comes back with a knock here or there. I mean, hopefully this one won't be too serious, and it is just we'll find out again in Steve Bruce's press conference. But I'm gutted for him because I think he's had 26 minutes this season, but he's the only person that I think on that bench you can turn to actually change a game. He's got speed. He's a great crosser of the ball. Him and Callum Wilson work really well together. And I would look to have him in that first team because of the way he creates. And of course, that would probably need a formation change and everything that comes with that. But I'm just good because I just think with a run of games, he could really be an asset to Newcastle side and to Callum Wilson. And we've been speaking there about Callum Wilson, and it's so frustrating to see him picking up these little injuries because, as James said, he is the key man for Newcastle. Without him in the side, there's not really a goal threat. He's got a great attitude. You don't see him getting frustrated at the way Newcastle play. You see him channeling that and trying to make them a better side, which I really love. Some players just throw their hands up in the air and sulk, and but he gets on with it. And the worrying thing for me is who replaces him, because you've got Dwight Gale there on the bench. But for me, if you play Dwight Gale, you have to change the formation because he is best when he's playing off the last man, when he's running onto the ball. Callum Wilson sometimes will drop deep or he'll come out to the wide to get it. He tends to hang out on the kind of right, doesn't he, and then come inside. Whereas Dwight Gale's, he's wasted. He's absolutely wasted in that position. I think you would have to change the formation and try and play the ball better. Gale, but that doesn't look like an option. You've got Joe Linton, who everyone on the sun said on the wide, but he's continuing to play it from the centre. He comes off the bench and plays Callum Wilson. Another frustration that we're sitting here talking about two potential replacements who actually aren't really replacements in this system. And Newcastle didn't go out and sign someone, at least on loan, to offer an alternative to Callum Wilson. I mean, it's totally bizarre.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, James. I know you like it. It's even sort of cockiness a little bit. The sort of cockiness of Callum Wilson and the fact that he is sort of that sort of confident in his own abilities in terms of scoring. And so Andrew's right. Like, what and who do we turn to? Obviously, with the lack of signs in the transfer window, which we'll get on to, when Callum Wilson will inevitably have other injuries, I'm sure, at this point this season. So how do we go about still posing a goal threat when he's not in the side?
Well, to be honest with you, I want to bring it back slightly to Ryan Fraser and what Andrew made some great points about him before. What the scary thing for me about Fraser is the fact that, yes, he's injury prone, but he's never played in his correct position. I mean, Bruce seems to want to play him as a central midfielder. He's never a centre mid in a million years, and it doesn't look as though Bruce rates him, does it? And didn't get enough game time last season, and again only picked for the League Cup defeat so far this season. But you talk about a bit of variation. Why aren't we using him? Why aren't we using him as a winger? Why we signed him as a winger and we're playing him as a central midfielder? But it's not looking good for us on the injury front, is it? I mean, Darlow, Dubravka, Dummett, Hayden, Shelvey, Wilson, Fraser, all out at the minute. But this brings it back, and this highlights how badly our summer transfer window has been, because we haven't added any backup for these players who, let's be fair, are already very injury prone as it is. If you look at Maximin, for example, Wilson, who we've already talked about, Hayden, Shelvey, Gale, Ritchie, these are all injury prone players, and the squad just looks so threadbare when these guys are out. And the fact that we let Atsu, Carroll, Lejeune leave, Matty Longstaff out on loan. We haven't bothered to replace any of these guys. And yes, look, Willock was a fantastic signing. I'm not disputing that. But to not even bring in any loan signings is just baffling. And look, we all know Mike Ashley wants to sell and has pretty much given up on the club. But if he thinks this squad is good enough and big enough to stay in the Premier League this season, then, well, he's even more stupid than I thought.
It's as if we've rehearsed this, James. You've brought me perfectly onto the next topic, isn't it? Thank you for that. I appreciate it. The lack of transfers, of course, was discussed by Newcastle United in a recent public statement that was put out just last week or the week before. I can't remember exactly when, but and it highlighted the policies that have been taken this summer in terms of recruitment and why we've only signed Joe Willock and not had any other signings of note. And so, Adam, coming to you on this, and obviously there's a lot of people who have taken the statement quite badly and had their own views on it. And so what is your view on it?
Yeah, I think first of all, I wasn't surprised at all to read it off the back of another poor, disappointing transfer window. As James said there, it's very clear that Ashley doesn't have any care at all for the club and wants out. So I wasn't surprised really to hear that was the club's stance. But I think it's quite clear from it that the club has no interest in engaging with the fan base. The fact that they've released this statement is probably them thinking, oh, this is us, engaging with the fan base, communicating with the fan base. But the language that's used there, it clearly goes against that. They could have come out and said, it's been a difficult 18 months because of COVID. Finances are a bit strapped at the minute, but we did try and secure a couple of deals that were unsuccessful, and we will, try again in January to bolster the squad. But there was nothing in it that gave us as fans any hope that there was a clear plan, clear transfer plan, any hope that there's an ambition within the club. So they could have used it as an opportunity, yes, to put out a message, but try and state something that would engage the fan base and bring the fan base along with the story of the season. And I've listened to quite a few podcasts sort of recently, including the Chronicle Live, Andrew. Don't worry. But a lot of people have discussed it. And one thing that really interested me, I think, was George Colkin's comment on the pod on the time, when he was saying that the message is that we're trying to be self-sufficient. But what we're actually doing, what the club's actually doing in its actions, is completely contradicting that. Because by not investing in the squad, not growing the squad, we're just going to stand still and then go backwards, where other clubs in and around us, for example, Villa and Southampton, our sort of rivals in that sort of bottom quarter of the league, are investing in the squad, are developing the squad. And by relying on this idea of spending within our means and being self-sufficient, we're actually going to end up going backwards. And there needs to be, speculation in order to accumulate, in order to develop the squad. So not surprising, but a real sucker punch, I think, for us as fans after what has been a poor start to the season as well. It's not as if we've got 6 points to cling on to after 3 games or anything like that. So just really disappointing.
Yeah. Obviously, looking at the squad now, it would appear that it is weaker than it was at this point last season, for example, considering who we've let go and who. Well, the only signing that we've brought in is Joe Willock. So from that point of view, we haven't got as many players in the squad, and we've not got perhaps the depth, which was one of the real issues last season as well. The fact that there wasn't much depth, and when big players got injured, we suffered in the fact that we lost some more. It doesn't really make sense to me. So with that being said, Andrew, do you fear for Newcastle this season? Do you see another nervy season where it's going to be tight, it's going to be scrappy, and it's going to just be that race to finish 17th?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be comfortable by any stretch, because even if Callum Wilson and Allan St-Maximin stay relatively fit, they just need to be out of form. They just need to be marked out of a game. And where did the goals come from? And it goes back to why haven't Newcastle gone out and signed a striker? And yeah, I do personally think the squad is weaker. And I know Steve Bruce did ask or reply to when he was asked that, like, how can it be any weaker? Well, as you mentioned there, Carroll's gone. Whatever people think about Andy Carroll, he presented a different style. He could come off the bench and he could create a bit of chaos, and he could get, put himself about a bit. And I'm not saying he's the answer to 20 goals a season or he's the answer to rival Callum Wilson, but, there's no doubt that when you brought him off the bench, he changed things up for the good for the most part. And if Newcastle had the backs to the wall, then he'd be an extra header in the box to clear the crosses out. But it's not going to be an exciting season, I don't think. I mean, I'd love to be proved wrong, but I do think it's going to be uncomfortable. I think they'll survive, but I think it'll be very close. I think when you look around, I mean, Adam's mentioned this, like the other teams around Newcastle have strengthened. I mean, you look at Palace, you look at Norwich, they've gone out and they've made the effort. Newcastle haven't really. And Newcastle said in that statement, look, we changed the rules, we brought in Willock. That's great, that's brilliant, I was pleasantly surprised they got Willock on a permanent deal. Didn't think it was going to happen. But what I will say, isn't that just the bare minimum we should expect of a Premier League club? Why are these rules here that you need to change when actually I get the whole self-sufficient argument and it's great to have that idea, but it's a gamble considering where we might be in January. If Wilson and St. Maxim don't stay fit or if they get marked out of games, Newcastle, we could see that window back in January 2013 when Mike Ashley had to go and put his hand in his pocket and bring in the likes of Sissoko and the other 3 or 4 he had to go and bring in because Newcastle was staring relegation and right in the face. And it's for me, it's a massive gamble to only bring Willock in when there are glaring holes in this squad. You're lacking bite in the midfield. You're lacking an athletic defender, someone who can actually, has got a bit of speed about them, and you're lacking a striker. And I do worry that Mike Ashley's rolled the dice, and it could backfire seriously. And it's just, well, what more can you say? And the statement was, I said that they had to come out and explain their position. So I will say, fair enough, they've done that because we do need more communication. The fans deserve better. However, I don't agree with the contents of the statements, and I know a lot of people don't. What I will say, hopefully, that this is the starting block to more communication going forward, because at least if they come out and explain their position, then Newcastle United fans, they might not like it, but at least you can't argue that they've not come out and said, well, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And it helps Steve Bruce as well, because whatever people think about Steve Bruce, he is at the moment the only public figure, and he gets everything. He gets all the flack. Doesn't matter what it is. And look, some of it's deserved, but some of it's not his fault. And I think the club need to come out and start just helping him a little bit, put someone else up and take something off his shoulders, because not every problem is Steve Bruce's problem at Newcastle United.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the self-sufficient argument there, the fact that also COVID's had an impact on the finances or lack of them, for example. But as you mentioned as well, other clubs have strengthened and other clubs have clearly managed to get around the COVID issues in terms of money. So, James, why is it do you think that Newcastle are taking this gamble to be self-sufficient and not invest as other clubs around them have?
Well, I mean, look, where do I start with this? I've got a lot to say on this, to be fair, so bear with me. But I will say, firstly, Alex and Norman from True Faith did a fantastic dissection of the statement in a podcast they recorded last week, which I'd strongly recommend anyone watching it if you've not seen it already. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing was a strange one to me, to say the least. I think this has been touched on several times already, but the fact that it didn't have a name attached to it was alarming. I mean, my first thoughts were, I've never known any Premier League club to do something like this before, release a statement like this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are the only club to have done it in recent times. It kind of felt like an admission of guilt in certain ways. But, it mentions a line in there, this does not come at the expense of being ambitious. But you're left asking yourself, well, what exactly are these ambitions? That nothing the club has done for me during the past 10 years has shown me that it wants to compete with the likes of Everton, West Ham, even Wolves. But yeah, the idea they tried to convey was due to signing Joe Willock. It was impossible to sign any other players in the window. And then to claim that not even one loan signing could be done was just a joke. And again, trying to put forward the idea that we're the only club that has suffered from the impact of COVID was just a load of nonsense. It just doesn't strike me that there's any kind of like long-term plan associated with the wording in that statement. And what they're trying to say, and it just seems to have just been cobbled together last minute, put out there without any real thought put into it. And whether or not, I'm strictly kind of, making my own thoughts here, but did it come from Steve Bruce? Was he very unhappy with what happened? Did he say, look, Andrew mentions before, he's the only public figure at the club. Did he say, look, I want you to put something out there because I'm sick of getting all this flack? But the whole thing, to me, the whole statement, it was a bit of a slap in the face of the fan base. And again, at the end, I think they mentioned something along the lines of "we are stronger together," which also to me was just ridiculous, really, considering all that we've had to suffer as Newcastle fans under Ashley's regime.
Yeah, no, you make very good points there, James. It was obviously completely out of the blue, but I'll come to you, Adam. Do you think it is positive, as Andrew mentions, that the club has made some form of communication, albeit not, say, what we'd like to hear?
Yeah, I think so. And sort of, as Andrew said, hopefully it's the beginning of maybe a monthly or even I'm not sure, a more regular, statement, a more regular pathway of communicating with the supporters. And it is good that they're coming out and speaking sort of instead of the manager, I think, on this one, to take that flag off him. And it's just, as I sort of mentioned earlier, it was a chance to put a positive spin on something after a poor start of the season and develop a bit of hope, and rather than just sort of almost down tools and say, well, this is it, sorry, we couldn't spend any money, let's just move on. It was a chance to sort of build a bit of positivity, saying, we went after players, we didn't quite get them, but we're hoping in January to strengthen the squad then and bring in some loan signs or something like that, just to give it that sort of positive spin. And again, it's sort of typical Newcastle United, that it's just sort of like, this is what you're getting. You're gonna have to put up with it. And James was saying there about the ambition. Clearly, their version of ambition is not the same as ours. So hopefully, it will be a sign of maybe more regular communication. But they need to use, I think, these opportunities to try and bring the fan base on board and give us some hope, at least some sense of positivity.
Now, as Andrew mentioned before, of course, as well, in 2013 there was the whole Mike Ashley bought a few players. There was Mr. Sissoko, Mapu, Yanga, and Biel came in. And so, Andrew, I'll come to you back on this again. If this time now, from now to January, does not go well, and we are still facing relegation, how likely do you think it is that policy of self-sufficiency might be abandoned and suddenly Mike Ashley has to dip into his pocket and buy some players?
Who knows? I mean, that is the question. You can never predict what Mike Ashley actually does, because he's just like that, doesn't he? I mean, he's a very unpredictable man. I really don't know. I mean, they've obviously gambled the fact that Newcastle have got enough. They said it in the statement, didn't they? That I can't remember exactly the words, but they pretty much said, we believe in the players, that there is enough here to have a decent enough season. You would hope that all this doom and gloom, we're proved wrong, and next time you invite me on at the show, Newcastle are sitting pretty somewhere mid-table. I know that's not what we all want, but we have to be realistic when it comes to Mike Ashley's Newcastle United. If they're in bother come January, I mean, there should be a bit of money there because the TV money comes in around that time. So there should be a bit of manoeuvring. And then, of course, you will have you'll have fans back through the turnstiles. I know attendances are going down a little bit. So, I mean, that all depends on the form and the results, I guess, to keep that level. But there should be a bit of money there. It's just whether they spend it and they spend it on the right players. I think what we saw this summer was that, it was originally thought there was a limited budget to work within, and getting Joe Willock back was going to look unlikely because the budget was so low. But then suddenly they moved goalposts to get Willock in. So what's to say they don't do that again, another version of that in January and sign, another player who could potentially make a real difference. Optimistic me is hoping that we don't have to have that conversation and come January the 1st, where we're talking about Newcastle being closer to the top 7 than the bottom 3, but that is me being overly optimistic.
Yeah, perhaps it is, and I'm sure we will have you back on the show at another point, and we'll see what's happened in the time since. Now, we are just going to quickly mention one final topic tonight, which we have decided to slide in at the last moment, which is the fact that tickets for the Leeds United game went on general sale today, or was it yesterday? I can't remember exactly. But this is an interesting one because Newcastle Leeds is a historically big game with two massive fan bases and quite a big northern rivalry. So the fact that this game has been put on general sale so soon, with still a week or so to go until the game is played, does that show that attendances will continue to fall, do you think, Andrew? And do you think that there's the apathy and the anti-Bruce sentiments, as we heard at the Southampton game, are starting to really rise and really take shape?
Well, I'm surprised, that they have gone on general sale because, as you say, there's such a history to this game. I mean, my first away game was going down to Ellen Road, and I remember what a game that was, and I saved Bobby Robson when we won in the last minute or so. And traditionally, these sort of games would have been sold out because, we all want to go and see Newcastle in a good game, Newcastle versus Leeds, especially the way Leeds are playing. It would be quite a good game. I guess that might be one of the reasons people don't want to see Newcastle get thumped off Leeds again as they did last season. I do think it does show a little bit of where the fan base is maybe turning, that people are getting a bit sick. I know I think it was 44 maybe against Southampton. It'll be interesting to see what it is against Leeds. And if the results continue, I think that very short honeymoon period of getting fans back in will quickly disappear. And I think we've already started to see that. We heard the chants against Southampton, and they were very vocal. There were large parts of the ground that did it. And that's only going to get worse if the results don't start to follow. Steve Bruce, has consistently said the only way you can change people's minds is to get the results. So that's what he needs to do. He needs to go out against Manchester United, get a result. He needs to go to Leeds and get a result. Whether that happens in practice is another thing. It is, like I say, I do think it is a sign of just how much discontent there is against the fan within the fan base towards Newcastle, that a game like Leeds is actually going on general sale. I don't know what it was like last season, with tickets and stuff against teams like this. How they ran general sale off. I do think this time around, I am very surprised given that what was home games fans were allowed back into. Friday night as well.
It is a Friday night, yes.
Sold out. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that really should be sold out. However, like I say, I think it's just a sign of the times.
Yeah. Now, I've also had some mention of possible issues that could come with this as well in the True Faith group chat. I'll come to you on this, James, because we saw in 2019 when Newcastle played Liverpool in the penultimate match of the season and what was our final home game of the season, that there was a lot of Liverpool supporters in the home end at Newcastle, and a lot of them were ejected and caused some bother. Could we see a repeat of that with a situation like this, with maybe a lack of prevention? Who knows, to stop fans getting tickets? I mean, obviously there may well be things in place to stop that happening, but if there isn't, could there be issues?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is just another example of the club getting it wrong again and not learning from previous mistakes. And you mentioned specifically the Liverpool game there, and I was there that night. Two Liverpool fans were sat in the seats directly next to me and my dad, and just acting up, pissed out their minds. You just couldn't enjoy the game. You couldn't relax. And look, thankfully, a steward managed to remove them both during the second half. But the poor steward, you having to get him out, and there was a lot of kicking off in the Milburn stand where I was sitting there, and it was especially in the corporate hospitality areas. There was chaos, and that game, from what I remember, was moved to a Saturday night for Sky, like the Leeds one has been. All these scouts was out in the drink that day, which will be the same next Friday, and it was bound to happen. But the club didn't see it coming, and in my opinion, it'll be exactly the same again next Friday night. And look, as Andrew said, there's always a bit of needle with Leeds and Newcastle. I've been at Ellen Road as well myself, and there's always that tension. There's no love lost there between both sets of supporters, and you can see it coming a mile off, and especially with the toxicity that's around our club at the moment. You can see it being easily like a repeat of that Liverpool game.
Yeah, and Adam, I'll come to you on this. What do you think? Obviously, there's the whole fact that there's the apathy of people not wanting to go and watch Newcastle, and of course there's that issue there. So what do you make of it all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, really disappointing that we don't sell out anymore. I remember there was a period of time, albeit St James's Park was smaller back then, sort of in the 90s, with the sort of 34,000, but that you just couldn't get a ticket for love nor money. And, season tickets had waiting lists. And to now think that we've got, 8,000, 9,000 empty seats in the ground is really disappointing. And I wrote an article recently for True Faith after the Burnley game. I went to the Burnley game in the Cup, and I wrote this article based on the fact that I was thinking, why do I go to the match anymore? And it's more about going for a drink with my pal on a Wednesday night. The football, I remember we were in the Trent House and it was about 20-8, and we actually looked at each other thinking, we have to go to this match. Like, we'll not just stay here, like enjoying a few pints, stood outside in a nice warm evening. So we'll best walk up to the ground. And it was almost like the match was another part of the evening. It wasn't like, what we're all excited about. And I think Norman mentioned this as well recently on one of the True Faith podcasts. You're almost sitting there thinking, why am I here? What, even if we'll win, we'll find out next week that we're not signing any players, or we'll get beat, or we'll get hammered, So it just, there isn't that desire, that sort of excitement around going to the match anymore. I think for people sort of our age anyway, it's more about going to catch up with your pals and having a few pints rather than actually going to watch the team. And but the other thing about the kickoff time as well, I was a bit surprised they put us at 8 o'clock on the Friday night, and we saw what happened at Wembley with the late kickoff in the Euro final, although it'll be absolutely completely different events. But for Leeds fans, haven't got that far to travel, and they've got time to obviously get in the city and have a few drinks and things there. So I was a bit surprised that they put the match at an 8 o'clock kickoff for a fixture that is a derby really for us this season. We haven't had one derby for a while, so no, hopefully it does pass off without an event. A couple of years back, we did play Leeds on a Friday night, a Good Friday actually, around Easter, and that seemed to, although I wasn't at the match, that seemed to pass by relatively unscathed. So hopefully it'll be okay.
Yeah, I remember that game actually. I remember being at that game because it was Chris Wood who equalised for Leeds for the 93rd minute, and which I thought the time was going to cost us the league to Brighton, but obviously turned out not to do in the end. That does wrap things up for tonight. We've rattled through all the topics there, and we've got through them all very well. So thank you to all three of you for coming on, to James, to Adam, and of course to our special guest, Andrew. Thank you all very much.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers.
Spot on. Just a reminder, as I had said at the start, that if you do want to write for True Faith or do things like this and be involved in the YouTube side of it as well, head to @TFNUFC on Twitter. Get in touch, drop us a line, and I'm sure we can sort something out for you. But that does wrap things up. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching this episode of the Writer's Blog, and we'll be back very soon. See you all soon, and goodbye.